Hello, this video by needlepointers.com will show you how to make a quilt for a doll bed. What you will need is some fabric, some batting material, this looks like, some eyelet trim that's 1.5 inches wide. The first thing you need to do is to measure your doll bed to determine the size of the quilt that you want to make. And we will be using a 1/2 inch seam allowance for this project, so the eyelet trim will add 1 inch to each side of your quilt. Cutting the size of the fabric, you'll need to determine the width of the quilt that you want to make, and then you have to subtract off the 1 inch and 1 inch, so you subtract 2 inches, and then of course you add 1 inch for your seam allowance, and you do the same thing for the length. For example, if you wanted to make a quilt that was 15 inches by 20 inches, you would cut your fabric 14 inches by 19 inches. You would need 2 pieces of your main fabric, and then you'd also need 1 piece of batting. Here I've already cut my main piece of fabric, and I used a plate to round the edges, which makes it easier when you're putting on the trim. The first step that you would do after you've done it is sew on your eyelet trim all the way around. The next step would be to place your fabric right sides together, and then place the batting on the top of that. And pin those in place. Okay, so I'm going to pin them around, and then I'll go to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to sew it. Okay, we're going to sew around the outside using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but we're going to leave an opening of about 4 inches so that we can turn it right side out. So as I said, about a half inch seam allowance, and then just stitch all the way around the outside. Okay, I'm back around. I'm going to back tack. And now you can turn it right side out. Okay, the next thing you would want to do is press it after you get it all out, but so it lays nice and flat. But I just want to continue on and show you the rest of what you would do. The next thing is where the opening is. You need to close that up. And you can either hand stitch it by hand, or I'm going to, this time, with this one, I am going to just stitch it closed with the machine. Just put it under and stitch it closed. If you hand stitch it closed, you wouldn't have this little seam that you see here. The next thing you would want to do is quilt your piece to hold the fabrics together, the batting and the thing. And you could do whatever you want. To quilt it, all you need to do is to do some really stitches that are very, very close together to begin it, so it tacks it in place. and then use a little bit longer stitch than what you do when you normally stitch, and you would just stitch along to hold it together, like so. And when you get to this end, reduce the length of your stitches, again, so you can tack it, and that'll hold it in place so it won't come out. And you can quilt it as much or as little as you want. Once you've done that, your quilt is done. I hope that you enjoyed this video. This is one that I've already quilted the whole thing, and it was pressed. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and comment. Subscribe to our channel because we publish new crafting videos on Mondays and Thursdays. On Saturday, we post quick tip videos and share our personal craft project. Also visit our website, needlepointers.com, for free doll crafts.